Hi, welcome to my video on integers. This is a review of the unit that I did on integers, and this is practice 1. Integers consist of 0, the natural numbers, and their opposites. Opposite of n. The n is for natural numbers. And integers is denoted by a capital I, like that. So when we talk about integers, we talk about the natural numbers, their opposites, and 0. Remember, 0 is neither negative nor positive, so there's no opposite of 0. Number 2, graph the integers between -3 and 2. The integers are just natural numbers between and their opposites. So what are the numbers between -3 and 2? So it's 2, negative, -1, 0, and 1. That's the integers between -3 is here and 2 is here. So these are the integers between -3 and 2. They're just, so that's a -1 and that's a 1. Again, the integers are the natural numbers, their opposites, and 0. So greater than -2. So there's a -2. So you're not allowed that. It got to be greater, not equal to -2. So it's a -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we keep on going. So to keep on going with the set of integers, we have to put 3 dots at the end of this arrow to indicate that it's going on and on and on. Number 3, place greater than and less than. Notice this is pointing to the right. This is pointing to the left. If you point to the right, so if you think about a number line, 1, 2, 3, 4. If you go to the right, you're getting greater. You're getting like 2 is greater than 1. 3 is greater than 2. If you go to the left, it's pointing to the left. If you go to the left, the numbers are getting less or smaller. So as I go to the left, 3 is less than 4. 2 is less than 3. 2 is less than 4. So any number on the right is greater than the number that's on the left. Any number on the left, if you're on the left of a certain number, then you're less than. If you're on the right of a certain number, you're greater than. So 4 is what to 1? 4 is here, and 1 is here. So 4 is to the right, so 4 is greater. -8, -3. -8, if you think about this number line, that's -4. That's a -5, -6, -7. -8 is here, pretend. -3 is right here. So -8 is to the left, so it's less than. -8 is to the left of -3, so it's less than. And -2 and -7. -2 here, -7 is over here. So if you think about it, -2 is greater than. -2 is on the right, greater than. Number 4, simplify. -10, add on 6. Well, we have a negative and a positive, so we subtract the two numbers, we get a 4, but there's more negatives. That's the way I do it. If I have a -4, add on -3, the two of them are negatives, so I add them up, get 4 plus 3 is 7, and they're negative. I got many negatives. So think about it, if you're in the whole 4, and then you're in the whole 3 more, so that means you're 7 in the whole. So if you have two negatives, you add them up and take a negative. If you have a negative and a positive, you subtract the two numbers and take the one which has more positives or more negatives. -9, add on -2. 9 plus 2 is 11 and is negative. -18 plus 3 is, you subtract the two numbers, you get 15 but there's more negatives. 5 plus negative 1 is positive and negative. You subtract and get a 4, but there's more positive. That's understood to be positive 5, so that's a positive 4. So positive 4 is the same as 4. 4 is positive because, well, you don't see any negative there, so it has to be positive. Now I'm going to add all these up. So what I do is that I add up the positives first, or the negative. So 9 and 5 make 14. Then I add up all my negatives, so that's 10 and 3, so that's 13 negative. Now I only have to, because I got positives and negatives, subtract the two numbers to get 1, and there's more positive. So if you did it this way, 9 subtract 3, add on negative 3 is 6, 6 add on negative 4 is 2, 2 add on 5 is 7, 7 add on negative 6 is 1. So I find it's better to add up the positive, then add up the negatives, and then subtract the two numbers. Much quicker that way, instead of flipping back and forth. And the same here. I got a 10, a 4, and a 14. So 10 and 4 is 14, and 14 makes 28. Let's add up the negatives. These are negatives, so 2, 3, and 1 is 6, negative 6. So now that I got them done, subtract, and I get a 22, and they're positives. That's faster to do it that way. Number 5, state the opposite of each. So the opposite of each is change the sign, because when you take a number and add on as opposite, you get 0. So the opposite of 6 is negative 6. The opposite of negative 4 is 4. The opposite of 3 is negative 3. And the opposite of negative 12 is 12. So what you're doing with opposites, you're changing the sign. So if you take 6 and add on negative 6, you get a 0. So opposites means you change the sign. Number 6, the sum of an integer and its opposite is 0. So if you take an integer and its opposite, you get 0. The only number that don't have an opposite is 0 itself. Number 7, simplify each. So now we got a double negative here. So with a double negative, I make it a positive. So to subtract the negative 2 is the same as adding 2. So that's 11. Again, you got a negative here. So if you want, that's subtracting 3. So that's subtracting is the same as adding on negative 3. So that's add up. That's a 20, and it's a negative. So when you subtract, you can add on the opposite. So when you subtract, you can add on a plus 2. So that's a plus 2 right there. So to subtract means you add on the opposite. So again, subtract 3 is the same as add on negative 3. We got subtract 10, so that's 6 plus negative 10. That's a positive. So when you subtract, you add on the opposite. So 6 subtract 10 is 6 and 10. 1 is plus, 1 is minus, so the difference is 4, but it's more negatives. And again, we have a subtract a negative 11. So to subtract the negative 11, we add on the opposite, which is a plus 11. So we add on, make that an addition, and change that to the opposite side. So negative 5 and 11, difference is 6, but it's positive. And again, I'll put the positive there or leave it out to make a difference. So that plus 6 is the same as 6. So when you subtract, you always add on the opposite. You'll hear me say that over and over and over. Number 8, multiplication of like signs is when you multiply like signs, signs that are the same. When you multiply like signs, you will get a positive. What we mean here, if you multiply a positive times a positive, you will get a positive. If you multiply negative times a negative, you will get a positive. So when you multiply like signs, you get a positive. When you multiply unlike signs, so if you multiply unlike signs, if you multiply a positive times a negative, you'll get a negative. When you multiply negative times a positive, you'll get a negative. So the multiplication of like signs is positive. The multiplication of unlike signs is negative. So let's see. What's a negative times a negative? Positive, because they're like signs. Negative times a positive is a negative, because they're unlike signs. Positive times a positive is a positive, because they're like signs. Positive times a negative is a negative, so that bracket means you're multiplying. So you multiply like positive times a negative, you're going to get a negative. So let's obey those rules. So we multiply like signs, positive, unlike signs, negative. So negative 2 times positive 4 is negative. 2 times 4 is 8. Unlike signs, negative. Like signs, 6 positive times a positive is a positive. 3 6s are 18. There's no negative to put in here. You can see that's what we normally do all the time. Negative 7 times negative 5. Like signs, positive, and we get 35. So I put 35 there, or I put a plus. But again, most people would just say that's just 35, understood to be positive. This is unlike signs. Positive times a negative is the negative, and we get an 80, negative 80. Multiplication of like signs, positive. Unlike signs, negative. Number 11, find the product. We're going to multiply. So we got a negative times a negative times a negative. So we got 1, 2, 3. We got 3 negatives, that's odd. So we're going to get a negative. And 3 times 2 is 6. If you multiply negatives and you got an even number of negatives, you're going to get a positive. When you multiply negatives and you got an odd number, you're going to get a negative. Let's check. What's a negative times a negative? Positive. And we got one negative left. We got a negative and a negative, negative. So that's 4 negatives. So when we multiply 4 negatives, we're going to get a positive. So we multiply 4 times 2 times 3. 6 times 4 is 24. These are ones. So we get positive 24 because we got 4 negatives. Number 12, simplify each. We got a negative 2 cubed. So when we cube a negative, that's an odd number, we're going to get a negative. And 2 cubes, 2 times 2 is 4 times 2 is 8. Now you could go negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. But you're multiplying an odd number of negatives, so it's going to be negative. Here we got negative 4 squared, so that's an even number of negatives, so that's a positive. 4 fours is 16. So if we did negative 4 times negative 4, you get negative times the negative is a positive. 4 4 is 16. Again, an odd power. And now notice these two are in brackets. This one is not. So this one means this is the negative of 5 squared. So this is 5 times 5. So that's, notice the negative, the 5 is squared, not the negative. Very important. Here, it's negative 2 cubed. It's a negative 4 squared. But this is only the 5 being squared, and it's the negative of that. So this is guaranteed to be negative no matter what this power is. Simplify each. We got a negative 1 to an even power. So 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 on is 1. Because we have an even number of negatives, it's going to be positive 1. So that answer is just 1. We got a negative 1 to an odd power, so we still get 1. But because it's negative to an odd power, it's going to be negative 1. So negative 1 to an even power is positive. Negative 1 to an odd power is negative. Number 14, the rule for division of signs is the same as the rule for multiplication of signs. So division or multiplication is what? When you multiply or divide like signs, you get a positive. When you multiply or divide unlike signs, you'll get negative. Negative. Like signs, positive, analyze signs negative when you multiply or divide. So division is the same as multiplication. So negative divided by positive is a negative. 40 divided by 8 is 5. Negative divided by negative is positive, and 8 divided by 9 is 2. 39 divided by 3, well, that's just 1/13. That's positive divided by positive, but we know this anyway. And here we have 24 divided by 6 is 4, and we have positive divided by negative is the negative number. And we have simplification here. So let's do, and again I'll write it down, P, E, M, D, A, S. Parentheses or brackets, exponents, multiplication, division, left to right, add, addition, subtraction. So I'm going to obey that here. So I have to work out the inside of this bracket here first. So I have a double negative. So I'm going to do the inside of this bracket first. This bracket is done and this one is done. So this is a double negative. So we make, is what I do. I go plus, plus. So to subtract negative 7 makes it a plus 7. So negative 3 plus 7, sorry, negative 10 plus 7. 10 subtract 7 is 3 and is a negative. So I have, now I'm only doing one step at a time. So I did the inside of this bracket first. Now I got to do my powers next. So negative 3 squared, negative 3 times negative 3 is 9. Subtract. Negative 1 to the 7th is an odd power, so that's negative 1. So now I got my powers done. I did inside the bracket. I did the exponents. Now I do my multiplication next. So 9 subtract negative 1. So when I multiply here, positive times a negative is a negative, and that's 20. So I did multiplication division first, left this. Now I'll do addition, subtraction, double negative. So I'll make 9. Double negative is a plus and a plus, so that's 1 minus 20. So here I have a 10 minus 20. Positive and negative subtract. 20 subtract 10 is 10, and it's a negative. Again, PEMDAS, very important. And we have to do the inside the brackets here first. So I have, that's done. This is not, so that's, so what's negative 4 subtract 1? So that's negative 4, add on negative 1. Negative 4 and subtract 1 is negative 5. So I have my bracket done. Now I have to do my power next, so we'll leave this one alone. Leave this one alone. Negative 2 squared is 4. Negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. So the power is done. Now I have to multiply and divide, or divide and multiply left to right. So I have to do this and then this. So that's negative times the negative is positive 15. Negative divided by positive is negative, so it's a negative 6. So I could do that if I want. And I subtract 4 is negative 4. So this is the same as negative 6. So 15 subtract 6. So let's do this. I got all positive and negatives here, so let's do, I go left to right, so that's a negative 10. 15 subtract 10 is 5. Now I could have went, if I wanted to, I could have went 15 subtract 6 is 9, and then subtracted the 4. And I would have got 5. So I could have did these two first to get 9, and then subtract the 4 to get 5. Or I can add up these negatives. Because they're all pluses and minuses here, I can add all my pluses and minuses and then do my subtraction. Or I can do, again, remind you, I can do these two first because I'm going left to right. That gives me a 9, and then 9 subtract 4 is 5. So either or, whatever way you want to go. And that brings us to the end of the review on integers. And again, if you're not a subscriber, click Click on the like button, click on the subscribe button, visit my math website, www.mathfullyexplained.com, to find more information about me, my videos, and the content. The content on my YouTube channel called Math Fully Explained, just one word. Thank you for viewing my video. Hope the video helped you. Bye-bye.